Welcome. This is PRCA's San Diego and Imperial chapter's first diverse dialogues that we are kicking off, and we're so excited to do it this month. My name is Edna Gutierrez, and along with Anne Flanagan, who is right here, we oversee the committee for DEI for this chapter. And again, thank you so much for spending your lunch with us. We appreciate it. This month, we're celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, also referred to as AANHPI Month. And we are very fortunate to have two amazing panelists here today. But before I make the introductions, I want to kind of just go a little bit over the history and what this month means for, obviously, in May, for what it means for API community or the AANHPI community. There's going to be a brief review, so I do invite you to make your own research always and make sure you study more into the Heritage Month. So API stands for Asian American Pacific Islanders, and AANHPI stands for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. The first use of Asian American is believed to be in the late 1960s, when Yuki Ishioka and Emma G., two graduate students at the University of California at Berkeley, from the Asian American Political Alliance. Over the following decades, Asian American gradually gained acceptance despite the challenge of representing the diversity of this demographic under just that term. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed a joint resolution designating Asian Pacific Heritage Week. And by 1992, May was officially proclaimed as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. It's important always to recognize this is there are more than 24 million Americans identify as API or ANHPI, representing over 50 ethnic groups and speaking more than 100 languages. This community encompasses diverse histories, stories, cuisines, and cultures. And let's remember, we should always use caution in using umbrella terms, as they might not always represent accurately the diverse experiences within these communities. Each individual is, have the right to identify with their own heritage in their own unique way. So Heritage Month to give us an opportunity to engage in meaningful conversations, which is the reason we are all here today during our lunchtime. And with that, I would like to introduce our two amazing panelists. I will just quickly say their names, their titles, and then let them make their own introductions. So first we have Carmela Prudencio, Director of Marketing and Communications at Pacific Arts Movement. This is the organization behind the San Diego Asian Film Festival. And our second guest is Chris Chan, Director of Council Communications in the Office of Council President Sean Elo-Rivero. Thank you for being here today. I'll let you continue with the introduction. I'll start with Carmela. If you can just kind of let us know a little more about yourself and how you are enjoying this API Heritage Month.
Thanks so much, Edna, and thank you all for joining us during your lunch breaks. I'm hungry, so I'm waiting for after this to eat my food. But so as Edna said, I am Carmela Prudencio. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications at Pacific Arts Movement. Outside of the San Diego Asian Film Festival, we also showcase the San Diego Asian Film Festival Spring Showcase, which just wrapped up a few weeks ago, and have some cornerstone educational programs like Real Voices. I also work very closely with many local AAPI communities doing comms work with different organizations like Convoy District and a lot of different art communities here. What is giving me joy during AAPI Heritage Month is eating food with friends. So there's so many different cultural events happening in San Diego this month, and I recently got to work for Convoy District's annual night market. There was so much amazing food there, and I personally love sweets, so there was plenty of ube flavored stuff to go around, way better than the Trader Joe's stuff. So I really suggest checking out all things ube and tons of other places in the Convoy District. thanks for having me.
Thank you, thank you. And yes, no, you have not been in Convoy lately. Lately, you have to go. It's definitely a beautiful neighborhood that's ever changing. So I'm looking forward for that side. But yeah, thank you for introducing yourself, Chris. Oh, we can hear you, Chris.
Chris, where's you still?
Yeah, you're mute right now.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So I'm Chris. I am working at City Hall, Director of Council Communications for Office of Council President Sean Elo-Rivero. I'm also on the board of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, which is a service organization from the started in the late 1800s to service Chinese immigrants coming to the United States for work. But I handle media relations, outreach for all things city council. So my job is to make sure everybody knows what's happening in the city council and the laws we pass. I'm finding joy during AAPI Heritage Month. I would say like eating food, but a variety of Asian food. It's one of my favorite things to do, but I do that all year. For this month, I'm really excited about supporting a lot of the organizations who uplift Asian communities in the city. And we just celebrated, had a city proclamation for AANHPI month, Heritage Month, and a lot of community partners came into the city council. So just enjoying spending time with a lot of the folks who are here and helping to make this month a wonderful time.
Wow, thank you. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing and for all the work that you do. That's great for our community. So let's kick off with the questions. And again, if anyone has just joined, just a reminder to mute yourselves. And we do have our chat open for questions, and we are going to be, hopefully we're going to have space for Q&A at the end. We don't want to starve anyone. So, at that point, we just ask people to raise their hands, and we have amazing people from our team monitoring this conversation. So let's start with the first question, and I'm going to start with Carmela on this, and then we'll just have Chris respond afterwards. Reflecting on your career path, what have been some of the most significant moments or experiences in your career that have shaped your journey into the media and communications industry?
Thanks for that question. So about 4 years ago, I was part of a group of local organizers and leaders in the Asian American Pacific Islander community here in San Diego to help form the San Diego API Coalition. During May of that year, I led my first ever virtual press conference. As I was saying earlier, some of those skills have gone out the door as we've been back in person. But like many of us at that time, I learned so much about finding creative and effective solutions to connect with folks at a time of social distancing. The press conference announced a city resolution to address API racism and discrimination in San Diego. The resolution was introduced by, at the time, City Council members Georgette Gomez and Monica Montgomery. As a lot of us were aware of that time, there was a rise in anti-Asian violence. And so this city resolution encouraged the city to publish Stop AAPI Hate reporting to the national organization, as well as work with the County Human Relations Commission to address anti-Asian discrimination and violence. This was the first time ever that I worked outside of the arts and culture space. And prior to that, I had done some work with Penny for the Arts campaign back in 2018 for arts and culture funding, but I'd never been in a space where I was able to support social justice efforts and my community at such a large scale. It was definitely a milestone moment for my career. Again, leading my first virtual press conference and for something that weighed so heavy on our community. And even now, I still work a lot with folks from the API Coalition, and that opportunity really gave me the connections and that have broadened like my community at large. Again, finding a sense of belonging in this community that I'd never experienced before.
It's incredible. A good reminder why representation matters, right? And telling your own stories is important. Thank you. Chris, you want to share?
Yeah, no, that's like Carmela's experience. COVID the pandemic was such an important time for folks in communications and PR and media. I remember I was working for District 5, Councilmember Mark Kersey at the time, and when everything just shut down, there was a sort of such a need for information. And so in my communications capacity, we just created an emergency newsletter just to reach out to as many people as possible to get the correct information, the latest from the government, and also other things that were happening with hate and suspicion and anger and fear and frustration. And the more I think you can, for the city, we consider ourselves a little bit of a customer service arm in talking to constituents, which is like all city residents. So just to maintain that communication, and knowing that letting people know that you're here for them, and if you have any questions, we had a lot of great and positive feedback of just reaching out to people. And another really significant moment on a happier note was when Councilmember Kent Lee, District 6, was recently joined the city council, and he is only the third Asian American to join the city council. The first one being Tom Hom back in the 1960s, which is pretty extraordinary to think about at the time. And since then, there have only been this is only the third one. So it was being a person who helped volunteer on his campaign and being here to let everybody know, make sure everybody knows that he's here, and the significance of him being here was just a wonderful time to be able to share with everybody in the community.
Impressive. Thank you for sharing that and giving us a little history on San Diego as well, in our community, and a reminder as well. Moving on to the next question. The AAPI diaspora is globally and very diverse, as we know, and a lot has changed, but there are still a lot of changes for the community. A lot of challenges, for this community. What have you observed when it comes to progress or lack of progress for AAPI community in this industry? And I want to start with you, Chris.
Yeah, I think in my realm, in a time of very exciting change, the past 10 years, we've seen numerous AAPI candidates and politicians come into positions of leadership by the will of the voters. And so that's very encouraging to me. Things that in different industries, and I think obviously this takes time. It's been an evolution over time, but private industry and different parts of the country, you can still see more homogenous demographics, and that's understandable because there's just people choose to live in certain places, but and also in California, there's a lot of private industry that still don't have a lot of representation of a variety of ethnicities and races and religion, sexual orientation, and I would hope that changes over time.
Yeah, definitely. That is definitely a good point. One of the things about San Diego is so diverse in industries, but obviously we want to see all these changes applied, everywhere. So yeah, that's a great answer. Carmela, how about you?
At Pacific Arts Movement, we're really focused on representation in media arts and specifically in film. Over the last few years, I call it like post Crazy Rich Asians. Like after Crazy Rich Asians came out, there's this huge wave of representation happening of AAPI folks in film and television. But at PAC Arts, we're not only advocating for AAPI people in front of the camera, but behind the camera too. So when we have filmmakers, producers, publicists, and marketing folks as well from our community leading the way, we are able to ensure that our stories are being told authentically and hopefully without tokenization and exploitation. I really think that there's been such great community efforts to get support of these films coming out. There's actually this thing called Gold Opens that I suggest y'all look into. It's when a film made by AAPI directors or that have a large Asian cast come out, there's like this huge movement to get folks to the theater so that they have like a huge opening weekend and really showcase the power of our community for these films. But there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to empower our communities and create platforms for our voices and stories to be heard. So we cannot stop with this progress now, and we need to continue to move forward. I have a lot of hope for that too, as we're seeing the next generation pick up a camera and tell their stories.
In what ways do you believe diversity and representation are important within your field? And what's your advice for helping to create more opportunities and representation for the API community, Carmela?
So I think that, again, working with youth to really uplift their stories and empower them to tell their own stories. It's really important for that diversity to happen in our fields, to cultivate a sense of empathy towards our communities and cultures for ones we're not familiar with. And that's where we can really find overlaps and similarities within our cultures. And we're able to advocate for ourselves when we have a seat at the table. So having that representation within our fields is really huge so that we can invite folks to start dialogues, to get to know each other. I have this mantra that is create space, take space, and share space. And so at this point in my career, it's time for me to create space for more folks to join the conversation. And so I really suggest that you and your companies be really intentional about creating equity and space within your workplace culture so folks can feel safe and comfortable to take up space. I think it's important to consider all accessibility within all intersections of our identities. And so we as individuals have the power to bring folks into the fold here. And I appreciate PRSA bringing us to the table here to share our stories today.
And we appreciate you and Chris because you are the voices and you also making the change. I love that quote. Can you repeat it again?
Create space, take space, and share space. Sometimes it's hard, especially even me as a woman of color, to want to take up space and kind of not want to shrink myself. It's really easy for that to happen. And so I want to be able to share space so that folks feel comfortable to take that space too.
I love it. Yeah, we need t-shirts with that. I am advocating. let's do t-shirts. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Chris?
Yeah, I would say, it's interesting, it was last year or a few months ago that there was an event in the news where a person who was applying for a job had heard that there was a racial slur being in the background. And I was joking. It's a very serious accusation, but I was joking and saying like, well, that's why we have a diverse workforce, right? So we can't say horrible things about each other. We're hesitant to do so, but we also we also learn so much from each other. I worked as Barbara mentioned, I used to be a journalist and was a journalist for about 20 years. I started my career in Hong Kong and Singapore, and in Singapore, in my office were Malaysian Muslims, there were Chinese, there were people from New Zealand, there were Brits, and there were mainland Chinese and folks from Japan and Korea. And in that space, you learn so much about other people, other cultures, other customs. I remember during Ramadan, I was eating lunch at my desk and I looked over at my colleague and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to eat in front of you when you're fasting," but it was a cultural exchange and a moment where I was able to learn from him, and he could teach others about his culture. So it's incredibly important. And I think I think it's important for the success of an organization too, because when you do have, my office has uh, it has such a diverse staff, whether it's Asian, East African, LGBTQ plus, Caucasian, Hispanic, and we all bring to the table knowledge of communities, knowledge of audiences and people that we try to reach out to, and so we are empowered by that information, the cultural understanding, and how to communicate with people. And I think it can come to great benefit for organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially now that there's questions about sensitivity. Instead of questioning that, instead of, you know, going to that topic, it's accrediting the fact that we're having these conversations. And it's because of, that, like you mentioned, we have voices, we have social media, we have more ways to be out there and get information and provide information. And that's why it's important to have it in the spaces where we work and organizations. And is why as communicators is so important as well to tell our own stories and have that diversity represented and shared. Thank you. That's great. Let's go to the next question. What do you think is the most impactful and attentive way for companies and organizations to commemorate this month and uplift API voices year-round, Chris?
Yeah, and I think obviously talks like this are so incredibly powerful because we have that learning experience, we have that sharing, and we bring ourselves closer to each other. My upbringing, my history, and it varies from all Asian Americans have a story, but I grew up in the Los Angeles area, lots of different, a very diverse town in some ways. And then when I moved to Asia, I speak Chinese, and I was speaking to people at my office who were locals, but they still called me white boy because I was from I was from the United States. I speak Chinese with a little bit of an accent, but there's a certain amount. I think it's important to understand there's a certain amount of that we want to all fit in and work together, but we also want to recognize our differences and what makes us unique. And I think as all human beings would. But I think things like this are very important on our city council floor, where all the 9 city council offices they have a credenza, and we can display things for different times of the year, especially like API Heritage Month. And it's a small thing. It doesn't have to be this grandiose gesture. I mean, even the small things of having cultural items out that start conversations, that recognize people's differences in culture and their backgrounds and their things that bring them joy, or things in history that are difficult but need to be said. One of the small things that I do during the Lunar New Year is we have the Chinese and many Asian cultures have a custom of having a small red packet, an envelope of money. And so I make sure to give folks around the floor a little red packet of lucky money to kind of, and it sparks the conversation to say, like, this is who I am. This is what we do. These are the things that are beautiful about my culture. And the more we share, even the little things, it becomes just a normal thing and part of who we are and part of the diverse workforce.
Yeah, I love it. Providing safe spaces, right, for us to express ourselves, our heritage, our culture, and share it the way that we feel comfortable with. That's a great point. Carmela?
Kind of like what Chris is saying, I think cultural exchange is so huge. And so engaging in media, film, art, even food, to learn more ways about our different or learn more about our diverse cultures in Pan Asia. I'm Filipino American, and so my culture is a lot different than other countries in Asia too. And I know the Filipino American experiences is very different from Filipino experiences. Chris, it's funny that you said that they call you white boy, because like I feel like my cousins in the Philippines also will make fun of my American accent too. And so like recognizing that But I think too at Pack Arts, we aim to create welcoming and accessible spaces for everyone to share their stories and start conversations that unveil those similarities and celebrate those unique differences. And so during API Heritage Month, I think it's really crucial to partner with local organizations to support their missions, work with folks who are doing work for those who are most impacted, working directly with those communities. And so at Pack Arts, earlier this year, we partnered with the San Diego Arab Film Festival to uplift their work. I encourage companies to turn to these organizations to help lead the way during this month. And there's so many here in San Diego. I know CCBA, Chris, we actually were at Pack Arts, partnered with them a lot. And I know the the lion dancers are super awesome from there. And there's also San Diego API Coalition to tap into, Asian Solidarity Collective, Lao SD, and of course the Convoy Cultural Partnership. To name a few to engage with and really just keep up with them on social media and see what they're doing. So you can see how you can participate and support.
Yeah, it's a good reminder of all the great organizations that we have in San Diego and to reach out and also having you both in the panel. So, in sharing this, your background and your heritage, also a good reminder how broad, API, how many people it represents, how many cultures. It's a good reminder that just not to box anyone and just to listen to the different stories and experiences that you have as being in the US, as having your background and talking to, family and friends and, like in Spanish, we said carrilla, which is kind of like teasing, that you get, but also understanding, where your background is and where you're coming from. And so thank you for sharing that. And since we do also have a lot of students that I'm pretty sure we're gonna be sharing this video afterwards, and we're gonna try to reach as many people as possible, including on the national level. And we do have a lot of students or younger people that are joining the communications force, the public relation force, and everything we're doing. And again, with your backgrounds being so diverse and how you started, do you have any advice to someone who just started their career in the media and communications landscape? Carmela, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, it's interesting. I worked with Arturo, who is part of BRSA, at MOPA a few years ago, and I had texted him feeling like nervous about this, and he's like, just be yourself. And I'm like, oh my God, of course. And so that was what I was thinking too, is like having your own authentic voice, being unapologetically yourself is so huge because it grounds you in the work that you want to do and who you are. This goes for all communities, not just the AAPI one. It helps guide me. It acts as like my North Star, helps guide me to get to the places that I want to get to. And then once I get there, how I can open up space for others. So something that I did early in my career was get coffee with people who worked in fields that I wanted to work in. And so if there's somebody interesting, like at the time when I worked at the Museum of Photographic Arts, I met a lot of women of color who worked at other museums who were doing such cool work, whether it was the Mingay or the Museum of Us, and was just like, do you want to get coffee with me in the park? I want to hear what you do. And so that's my best advice. And if any of y'all want to get coffee with me, please message me too, so that you can really hear what those experiences are like and kind of see who you can become too.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll take you up on that coffee. I definitely want to get coffee with you. I work at the San Diego Tourism Board. So we definitely work again with a lot of the neighborhoods, including Convoy. And I know you're doing a lot of great work there too, but also we work a lot with our politicians as well and our representatives as well, because the work we do, reaches everyone locally as well. So Chris, you have an interesting background in media, which is something we see often in communications and public relations. We see that shift. I don't know if we're the only ones that call it jumping into the dark side. I'm pretty sure we have used that. I know a few people that have done that. So do you want to share, Chris, a little bit about that and your path?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting is that transition was a lot of fun to a certain extent. I was a reporter and then constantly writing, and then I made a transition to doing my own production company and helping folks create videos, and did some media relations work as well. And I think the most important thing is learn to write. Write and learn to be yourself in your own voice, but also in whatever job you might take, you're most likely going to have to speak in someone else's voice. So try on different voices, try on different things, try different ways of communicating, and don't be afraid to experiment as well. You know, before I took this job, I started my own website, had a little bit, with a blog, just to be able to get those muscles of writing and expressing yourself in different ways is incredibly important. Learning to say different things and in different voices, and in diverse voices is incredibly important. And once those muscles build up, finding a job or doing the job well becomes easier.
Yeah, this is a good reminder that no one's path is linear, that it takes, it's a journey. It takes you different ways. And I think that's one of the things I love about public relations, but communications in general, is that it's so broad. And again, this is a good example, right? Like, you can do your communication skills to work on a government level, right? And work with the community directly. And then Carmela gets to do a little more fun side, and and share those voices through film, through the media, and also help communities. So it crosses over, and I think that's what communications and public relations, and then this world that we all of us either chose or picked us. We picked or picked us. And this is like a great opportunity. I know I've seen the messages, and I see a lot of people very excited about everything that you're sharing. Maria, voicing that create space, take space, and share space, and loving that. A lot of people, Carmela, wanted to do boba or coffee, so we had to pick a big place for that. And yeah, and like Bart mentioned, she knows you, so it's interesting how this community is very very well connected, and somehow we all kind of know each other, or someone knows someone. So that's great. And I know we're gonna have a space for questions, for Q&A. So I don't know if some people have any questions. If you want to start, put those on the chat, or also happy to. If you raise your hands, happy if you want to meet our panelists and have a direct conversations. I see like there's a lot of fans from you both, a lot of people here cheering you on. But before we start with the questions, do you want to share how you're planning to celebrate and honor your heritage this month? And who wants to start? I have Chris, so you want to go ahead and share?
Yeah, I think reaching out to folks in the community, which I do in my volunteer work as well, but also sharing online and uplifting. One of the things I tried to do, I think it was last year, was to start a social media trend, and get everybody to share their Asian food, because Asian food is that kind of easy touchstone that most people have access to, and can learn more about culture through food. And so if anyone wants to start that next year, I am game as well. So it'll be a challenge to share as much of my meals on social media as possible, but definitely taking the time to uplift folks on social media who are doing work in the community and sharing their stories is what I'm really doing.
That's that's true. Food connects us all, right? And also it speaks our culture, our heritage, that connection with our family and friends. And there's a reason now we take pictures before eating. And that's why Instagram is huge, right? It's that connection with food, loving the food, and then the aesthetics, of course. I do see a question actually for you, Chris, since it's about food. It's actually Carmela. She has a question for you. Do you want to ask her and then share how you celebrate?
Well, I wanted to ask Chris, what restaurants are you excited about right now? I love talking to people about what restaurants they've been going to. Is there anywhere you're really into right now or that you suggest? Any Asian restaurants?
I have been, I'm a big fan of pho, Vietnamese noodles, soup noodles. And so when I was a reporter, we'd end up all over the county, and I would just go and stop off at whichever one just to see, just kind of rank them in a spot and actually go back and know where they are to go back and see them. But there's this place called Pho Duyen Mai that's in the 163 and Claremont Mesa. And they have a spring roll there that is like it's soft on the outside, but there's some crunchy stuff on the inside, and I don't see that in too many places. So it's a shrimp or pork inside the spring roll, and it's crunchy on the inside. So it's really fun, and my wife and I keep talking about that.
I've
We
been
go
to that
there.
place, but I have not had that. So next time I go, I will try
Definitely,
that.
I highly recommend it. Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, someone else, Mariah's been there too.
It's good. It's right off it's in Convoy, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
in the area. Yeah, food is really just one of the biggest I mean, every time you eat, it feels like a celebration when you're with your community and folks. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, so coffee and spring rolls, right? Is that what we're doing?
The next PRSA mixer.
Right? And we don't have the month, and we don't celebrate only this month. This is also a big reminder. Do not celebrate heritage just for 1 month. This is an opportunity to have these conversations, to highlight and talk about topics and get to meet people, but let's celebrate the whole year round, all these amazing cultures that we have, especially here in San Diego. We're so culturally diverse, and we're very lucky, like Chris mentioned, that we can find these amazing restaurants and cuisines and dishes, and we get to share different experiences. I think we're lucky to live in a city that is very that has that offering, and we have amazing chefs on that. But how about you, Carmela? You want to share your favorite restaurant as well, and then how you're going to be celebrating this month?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, it's been such a busy month for us. I think everyone in the API community is like, oh my God, API Heritage Month is coming. It's going to be really busy. So, many news outlets have been looking to uplift our community's events and spotlight our community members. And I was going to say exactly what you said, Edna, is that I hope that folks still want to hear from us outside of these months so that we can have better representation throughout the year. I know recently in April, I helped pitch some stories about TLC New Year, which is the Thai Lao Cambodian New Year. And I had never known anything about it. Usually like in the Philippines, they also celebrate Lunar New Year, and I'm part Chinese. So like I'm familiar with that holiday, but I didn't know about TLC New Year. So we were able to work with Mekong Restaurant in Convoy District with Stella to share her story and share her background and why she has this restaurant there. And so it was so cool to learn about that. And it was in April, but I was like, okay, do you think people are going to take this story? Is Fox 5 going to grab this story, And so making these pitches all year round is super huge. Food wise, I am so obsessed with hot pot. Mongolian hot pot on Claremont Mesa Boulevard, I think is where it's on, is so good. Like it's the best to eat big meals with people. I love it. You're basically just like cooking your own meat in this soup and just can get as many vegetables as you want. But the smell, the spices that they use, they're so good. Really great place for big groups. And so I have my birthday party there every year. So if you guys want to come to my birthday and eat hot pot, you're also invited. But yeah, celebrating through food is always such a huge thing that we do at Pack Arts as well. And we're getting ready for our 25th anniversary this fall. And one of our big kickoff parties is called Chew the Scene, which is a big food event. So I hope you all can make that too. Also, to talk about how I'm celebrating and honoring my heritage this month, there's been kind of a somber tone this month for me, I think, because of what's happening in Palestine. And so what's been really helpful for me, especially as Filipino American, and because I feel like my identity is so rooted in resistance and revolution, that I can connect with the folks in my Filipino American community to organize and to uplift voices from all around the world. Again, it's been tough to celebrate sometimes with everything going on in the news, but it does feel better and more comforting to be with the people that I organize with, the people at my organization, and have the support of folks at Pack Arts too, with all the work that we're doing.
Yeah, supporting other communities is also a way to celebrate, right? Because we have, we might be diverse in heritage and backgrounds and histories, but we also have a lot of us share experiences or similar experience when it comes to either immigration or, again, you know, a lot of the things that are happening today, we've seen it in our communities. So it's a good way to celebrate. I do have a couple of questions, and I have one for you, Carmela. Can you talk about the work you did on the Convoy District freeway signs and why that was important?
Those were such an exciting time for us when those signs went up. I didn't particularly work on this project. I'm working on some other cool projects that are happening in Convoy District soon through District 6 office. So yeah, we're excited about the growth and expansion in Convoy District. But I really think that these signs are important for placemaking, to really put that mark on the community that like we are here, and to celebrate and provide resources too for that community. And so we are anticipating a big neighborhood sign coming in Convoy District. I'm not sure when, maybe Chris knows more than me, but we do have a big sign coming up for Convoy District. And these cultural arts district designations help provide opportunities for us to fund community arts initiatives in Convoy District. And I know that there's a lot of different changes happening, like development of more housing in the community, as well as bike lanes and a lot of other things. And so as we create this place for folks to explore Asian and Asian American culture, we're able to incorporate a lot more into that, so that this is something that is abundant and something that continues to expand over time. Not just like, hey, we've got a sign, cool, but it provides a lot more opportunities than just those signs. And those signs mean a lot to the community members there too, to really showcase like, hey, like the city sees us, and that our neighborhood is here, and the folks that are a part of this community, whether they're business owners, folks who've been living there for a while, or folks who want to just get something delicious to eat, that they can feel welcomed in that space.
Yes, that's great. And we are looking forward for that sign, but also all the changes happening in that neighborhood. I know I recently took a tour there, and there's a lot of new development, a lot of changes happening. So again, if anyone here has not been, I highly recommend. And and we already have restaurants to check out there, and we already have looking forward for Carmela's birthday as well to celebrate with her. We were gonna need a big restaurant for that, but yeah, definitely go check out the neighborhood and you know the changes that are happening. And it's just a great space to eat, and one of those hidden gems that we have in San Diego that's like for us, for locals. Chris, there is a question also from Barb. How do you ensure your family carries on traditions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is. I'd like to say we just got to do the thing. You know, I grew up with a lot of the traditions, like celebrating the Lunar New Year, and the Mid Autumn Festival, and it helps now that I'm on with the CCBA. We have regular events for those things. You know, a couple months ago there was a grave sweeping festival where usually families will go to the cemetery and clean the grave sites, and we as an organization will go, and there's an area where there are a lot of folks, former San Diego residents who are laid to rest there, and we go and clean those up. And so as you go ahead, and whichever culture it is, you know, you just want to make sure you do those things and bring your kids along. I know Barb has a baby, probably not so much a baby nowadays, but doing those things every year and on a regular basis and making it a part of your life is the best way to kind of reinforce in their brains that this is part of who I am. I have this around me. For me, growing up, I was almost two worlds. I spoke Chinese at home and then English outside the home mostly. And so making sure that that's there and available and traveling to a home country is incredibly important. So that it's just a part of them, not something that they necessarily have to go out of their way to do. It's just they do what you do.
Yeah, even the little things matter, but also the work that you're doing, both of you are doing in the community. I think that also it's a good way to represent your heritage and your family. So kudos on that. I have one more question. And again, we were talking about food on lunchtime, and some people did share their lunch while they're eating, but a lot of us are hungry, and it's funny that we're talking about food. So I do have a question, and this is for both of you. What are some ways comms professionals can help amplify AAPI voices? And Chris, since I have you on the screen, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think it is obviously social media has made it so much easier to do that. But where Carmela was talking about the networking and speaking and having coffee, and to be able to talk to people so that you can share with others in conversation, to say like, hey, this is AAPI Heritage Month, and did you go and try the Vietnamese restaurant, or did you know that we've only had we've had three Asian council members, or did you know that this is happening in the Convoy district? Let's go check it out. I mean, that I think word of mouth, and I think in communications they said the messaging is so much more powerful when you have one person share with the people who are around them, and then that message spreads. Is such a more powerful way of spreading a message. And I think if we share those conversations among our communities, that goes a long way in uplifting AAPI voices.
Yeah, that's a great point. Carmela, do you have any tips?
Well, I mean, I think that like following your curiosity, like if you're interested in something, and food is always the doorway to a lot of that if you're interested in these cultures is seeking them out. And so, Edna, you had mentioned that you went on a walking tour, and Convoy District right now has been doing these walking tours to tell the history of that neighborhood. I think that's such a great way to learn about what's happening here locally and the history here locally. I also suggest coming to watch some films at the San Diego Asian Film Festival too, because again, like food, I feel like film is really accessible to learn more about cultures you might not know about. And it really opens it up to interpretation to the audience member based on their experiences. So a director could be sharing a message about something specifically, but the way that you personally are going to receive that message is really huge and varies person to person. So there's lots of amazing documentaries out there to check out to learn more about AAPI history, as well as just connecting with folks from the community. I think that, we're out there, we're not just hiding, and I think we had spoken about this in another conversation that like, for me, I don't know that many Asian American folks in comms, and now I know Chris, but I would love to connect with more folks in my community and outside of my community as well. So again, being able to find spaces where we can all share about maybe the things we have in common, like the folks on this call, perhaps we can share about public relations and social media tactics, all of those things. That's where our common ground is, right? And so how can we expand on that common ground to get to know each other so that it's not just like, hey, I don't know much about Asian people, let me talk to this person, that like, hey, I'm like, for instance, me and Arturo are pretty close. Arturo knows me, I know him, that we can talk to each other and be like, hey, I've got this going on. Can I ask you if this is okay if we post about it? Is this a good way to tell this story? And I've always really appreciated that kind of peer-to-peer I guess recommendations and review and all of that. So definitely for PR folks and comms folks to connect is really big.
Communications within communications.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point. And I want to thank both of you so much for spending your time with us again during your lunchtime, talking about your stories, answering our questions, and especially for the impact you're making in our community. We can see it. Sometimes we don't know the faces, we see things happening, we see the motions, we get the press releases, we hear the communication, we hear the buzz about something happening in different communities. And sometimes we didn't get to see who's behind that work, which is a lot of times part of communications, unless you're a spokesperson. So thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Carmela, for your time. And thank you for everything you're doing in the community. I am leaving this panel truly inspired, not just to eat and, and go to convoy, but also to continue to be the voice, to continue to represent, and continue to do the work, right? And we're leaving with a few quotes. And is there any last comments that you want? I know Chris already also mentioned like he wants to join us for coffee. So we have a big party coming up with everyone here. And as we continue to share this, hopefully we have more people joining. But any last comments before we just wrap up?
Yeah, I just sorry, I just jumped in quick. I wanted to say thank you so much for to you, Edna, and all the PRSA folks here for having this talk. It's so important for us to have speak to each other in our community, our comms in the PR community, and share stories and bring this closer together. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Chris, too, for everything you're doing at the city level. I feel like I've been impacted by you, even though I've never met you before. So I appreciate the work that y'all are doing at the city level. And thank you all, too, for your comms work. And you mentioned this, sometimes you don't know the faces behind all this work out there. And so all those press releases, all those social media posts, y'all are the people behind it. And I celebrate you, and I love marketing people. So appreciate everybody.
I want to thank you to Carmela and Chris for being so vulnerable with us today, like on behalf of our membership. And also thank you for Edna for moderating. What I did not know you had that incredible skill. Thank you. You did amazing as well.
Well, me neither. We found this together. First time we do this, but it's just a great conversation. So again, I give it to Chris and Carmela for making it easier, for sharing. Great comments. Everyone's just thanking you for sharing again, for being vulnerable and for sharing. So thank you so much. So I'll give you 4 minutes back of lunch. Enjoy and have a good celebration on API Month, Heritage Month. And let's meet everyone at Convoy. We'll make it happen in person eventually. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for your time. And we'll be sharing this video on our social media channels, LinkedIn. And we're also going to share with the National BRCA DI committee. And hopefully they'll share it and continue to spread your voices and your messages. So have a good day, everyone. Thank you.